Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to the motherland of Scotland once again for the first time in what feels like a very long time. Now we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. These guys are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene, but they have built up a very good reputation for themselves in that short time, and they are most definitely best known for the different kinds of sour beers. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I have tried from these guys before on a couple of occasions. It's one that I know they can do very well, but this one is a little bit different to the other ones we've had in this style category from them before. It's got something that I'm very curious about in it. So needless to say, I'm very excited to try this beer. Hopefully it's as good as I expect. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to the city of Dundee on the River Tay, which is a little bit to the northeast of where I'm from, near Stirling in central Scotland. And we're going to have a look then at another beer from the wonderful Holy Goat Brewing. So this particular beer is called Blood Eagle. It comes in at 7.4% ABV, and this one is a blend of a Flanders red ale and an old stock ale. So yeah, this should be really quite an interesting one actually, because it does have some smoked plums in it, and that's what I was most curious about with this one. As you know, if you've watched the channel for any length of time, my love of sour beers really began with Rodenbach and Duchesse de Bourgogne, two of the classics within that particular style category. And there's a lot of modern breweries having a go at these now and doing some really nice examples of them, and Holy Goat are doing some very interesting stuff across the sour beer genre, if we can call it that. So yeah, this is one that I saw here in Hong Kong, and I thought, we have to have a go at this and see what it's all about. I think I bought this one at Craftissimo, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I'll put the link to their page in the video description below, and if you do find yourself in Hong Kong, then that is a place I highly recommend that you check out. Big shout out to Akil over there, of course. But yeah, 7.4%. English stock ale, Flanders red ale blend with some smoked plums in it. I think that should be really interesting. So let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. This is my first Holy Goat review in a couple of months actually. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Holy Goat Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Scottish playlist along with a number of other things that's being added to very regularly, of course. And do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Holy Goat Brewing before we taste the beer. So Holy Goat Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the city of Dundee, and the company was founded back in 2021 by Johnny Horn, who was actually one of the original co-founders of Vault City Brewing. So Johnny is originally from Wales, and he started experimenting with fermentation when he was about 15, but he later moved to Edinburgh to study a PhD in archaeology. But he says that he ended up reading more brewing textbooks than textbooks and papers and things for his PhD. But he ran the University Brewing Society, and he also worked at Brew Store before he got a job brewing part-time at the Hanging Bat on Lothian Road in Edinburgh. I do recommend you check out that place as well. But it was there that he began to experiment with different sour beers and wild ales from about 2012 onwards. But during his time at Hanging Bat, he met Stephen Smith-Hay, who was one of the customers, quite a regular customer, and he was also interested in setting up his own brewery. And after they got things in motion, Stephen's partner Adele joined them, and that was the foundation of Vault City Brewing. But initially they didn't think so much about making money, and they basically set up what they called a glorified home brewing kit as their main brewery in Stephen and Adele's kitchen, and they began brewing weekly back in July of 2018. But over the following year they began visiting a few different beer festivals, and this spread the word about their beers, and they went down very, very well. But after this, Vault City started brewing their beers at 71 Brewing in Dundee, and they spent a total of 16 months there. But Vault City were in the process of setting up their own brewery in Portobello, just out to the east of Edinburgh. And the thing was, at that time, you know, Vault City really wanted to have like a base beer and experiment on top of the base beer, whereas Johnny was more looking to brew a lot of different kinds of things. And Johnny really enjoyed the time up in Dundee, and he decided at this point that he wanted to do his own thing, and so he set up his own company called Holy Goat in 2021. But Johnny says that the new business model allows him to go back to being very experimental and also maintain profitability. So yeah, basically the Holy Goat beers are brewed at the 71 Brewing facility in Dundee, because it is quite a large facility actually. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 85 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about these guys. Like I said, over the last few years they've built up a very, very good reputation for themselves, and you know, it's kind of cool. Vault City and Holy Goat really have been driving the sour beer scene in Scotland actually. So yeah, I think Vault City are the ones kind of making it a little bit more accessible for people, I guess, and Holy Goat are kind of you know, introducing people to the more traditional styles. I think that's a nice way to sort of put it. And you've also got the likes of Epochal now as well, who are doing the really old kind of funky sour beers too. So yeah, a lot of interesting things happening in the Scottish beer scene, but Holy Goat are definitely one of the breweries that I would highly, highly recommend that you check out. But yeah, that is everything I can tell you about them for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a wee bit more about all the different beers that they've done. So yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a wee look at the artwork on this one. There you can see the Blood Eagle, of course, which I think is really nice. I do like the artwork on this one, I have to say. Round this side you can see the Holy Goat Brewing branding there, which is great. And it tells you a wee bit about the beer on the side here as well. So it says, this is the 2023 edition of Blood Eagle, I should point out. Harking back to one of our earliest releases, Blood Eagle returns, a cross between a Flanders Red and a British stock ale, brewed with a mixture of crystal, amber and rye malts. Primary fermentation was undertaken with one of our favourite Brettanomyces blends, in addition to our house culture of yeast and bacteria. This beer was then blended 70-30 with a 1-year-old stock ale aged in red wine barrels. We transferred this blend onto 200 grams per litre of this season's Victoria plums, and a portion of these plums were smoked over wine barrow staves at the brewery. The resulting beer is complex with a vinous and vinous with a subtle smoke. Drink young or age and this will get weirder. Hail the goat. So yeah, that's nice. But yeah, I was very, very curious to try this one. So we're going to drink it young. But this is a 375ml bottle, which is common for Holy Goat. But let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we go. I've been wanting to try this one. I bought this before I went away on holiday for the summer, and I've been wanting to try this one since then. So let's get this guy out into the glass and see how we go. I'm really curious about this for sure. Just need to pour it slowly, as you often do with these sour beers. Just check if there's any sediment, just a little bit at the bottom, and we do want a wee bit of that in there. And there you go, almost perfect pour, look at that. That looks great. So, this beer obviously at the time of filming, I'm not sure when it would have been released. I don't know how long the Holy Goat stuff takes to get over here actually. But yeah, This one, as I say, 2023 edition. I'm guessing there will be a 2024 edition, but you can see that it's poured with a lovely 2-finger frothy, I would say kind of fawn coloured head there. If I bring that up to the to the camera, it looks absolutely beautiful. You can see medium-sized bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid there, more foamy ones as you go further up, and the colour of this beer is really interesting. Obviously, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, unless you get a darker coloured beer. But with sour beers, any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into them will affect the colour as well. And when you consider that this is a blend of different beers, this sort of, how would we describe that? A sort of leathery tan brown kind of colour. It's almost the same colour as my wallet actually. But yeah, it's got that sort of leathery tan brown type colour to it. Some of the colour will of course be from the stock ale, some of it will be from the Flanders Red, and the plums will be contributing to that as well. But you can see this beer is actually quite opaque, because as I say, there was a little bit of sediment in this one and I poured it in because I think, you know, with sour beers I think that gives you quite a little bit more flavour, but that's just me. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there, and a few little ones going up toward the head, but you can see that head has just receded a little bit, but it is retaining fairly well, which is a good sign. But yeah, I don't think we really need to say much more about the appearance of this one. I think it's it looks kind of as you would expect from a Flanders Red. I've seen them, you know, more red than this, but I have also seen them. Some people kind of mix up the old, or sort of combine the Old Bruin and the Flanders Red. I'd say the colour of this one's maybe a little bit more like an Old Bruin. But yeah, let's have a little look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's like. I have to say, very, very curious about this. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit going on in that. You know, it's one of the more leathery, definitely like a more kind of leathery Flanders Red compared to many that I've come across. And usually when you get these kind of leathery aromas and flavours in beer, it's to do with the wort boil and the length of the wort boil. But yeah, for me, the yeah, this one's really interesting actually, because you've got quite a little bit of like toastiness and things. You can definitely smell the rye malt in this one. It was rye, amber, and what was the other one? Crystal. Yeah, Crystal is a German malt if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, you can really smell there's quite a lot of breadiness in this beer. It's not, if it's a Flanders Red, if I'm thinking about it in this style category, because it is 70% Flanders Red, it's certainly one of the more grainy, leathery and malty examples of this style that I've come across. Although in fairness, all of them are malty, but they tend to be a bit sweeter. So it's maybe right to say this is one of the more kind of grainy examples of that style category. But let's just take the aroma and break it down a wee bit more and describe it for you more in depth, as we always like to do. So, the backbone of this beer, absolutely, you get a little bit of this toasty, slightly well-fired rye bready bread crust in there. So I really like that. So yeah, toasty, rye bready, well-fired bread crust. You do get quite a little bit of woodiness out of this one, which you'd kind of expect when you've got, you know, a part of the beer, 30% of it is aged in wine barrels. So there's a little bit of woodiness in there. You can smell a little bit of cracker as well. Lots and lots of rye bread. Lots of like wholemeal brown bread, you know, German wholemeal brown bread. That's going to be from the Crystal malt, of course. And I think the amber malt is giving you a little bit more kind of brown sugary character, because yeah, within the bready characters, there's a little bit of like nuttiness in there, maybe like hazelnut or almond or something. Yeah, there is definitely a wee bit of nuttiness in there. I want to say hazelnut. I do want to say hazelnut because it reminds me of some of the kind of chocolates and things that I've had. So yeah, good little bit of hazelnut coming out of the beer. And then above, as I say, above the brown bready characters, you start to get the brown sugar. So you've got a lovely sort of toasty, you've got a lovely kind of toasty brown sugary note coming out of this one, which I think is great. So yeah, toasty, slightly well-fired brown sugar underneath. Then you've got a more leathery brown sugar kind of sitting on top. You've got more leathery brown sugar sitting on top of that. And the leathery ones, like I said, that is most likely due to the you know, when you get leathery brown sugars, usually it's to do with the wort boil. But I'm guessing the brown sugars the sweeter ones I think will come from the Flanders Red, whereas the more dry ones will come from the English stock ale. You know, English brown sugary beers tend to be that little bit more dry and a little bit more toasty, so I'm guessing that's where it's coming from in this one. What I'm surprised about in this one with the aroma is that it's not too vinous, actually. You can smell, like if you take the aroma in really deeply, you can smell a little bit of a wine barrel in there, but oddly enough to me it doesn't come across as being a bit more sharp in the way that red wine barrels normally do. It's actually a bit more like a white wine barrel in some ways. So that's quite interesting. It comes across as a bit more kind of woody and funky almost, with a wee bit of like white winey character on top of it. So that's an interesting quirk about this beer. And if you sugar it up, it doesn't change too much. If you sugar the beer up, you start to get more of the kind of rye bready, brown bready sort of things coming out of this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together is quite interesting as well, for sure. So on top of that, there's a wee bit of let's say you've got the toasty brown sugars in there, you've got the leathery brown sugars. You do get little hints of like a straight up sweet caramel, which is quite interesting. So there's a wee bit of that going on, straight up sweet caramel. Lovely little bit of more, lovely little bit of a more kind of toasty biscuit and things as well. So yeah, the malty side of this beer is really interesting. In terms of the yeasty side of the beer at the back of the nose, yeah, you can smell a little bit of that. Like, it's quite woody for me at the back of the nose. There's a little bit of that kind of more farmhousey, bready note, little bits of cracker and things at the back of the nose too. So I'm curious to see how the yeasty character in this beer is going to be, because obviously it's a blend. So you can get some really unusual things when you do that. But yeah, the more that you smell of this beer, I think the more woody and kind of crackery and things it gets. I really like how all of this, how it all pieces together actually. So it gets a big thumbs up from me on the malty yeasty side of the aroma. Now, when it comes to the hoppy side of these beers, so when it comes to the hoppy side of sour beers, for me, there's two different. It's always interesting to talk to sour beer breweries about what mentality they take. So back in the day when you're brewing Flanders Reds and stuff like this, they would add older hops into the beer because a lot of the alpha acid potency had kind of dissipated, and they didn't want the bitterness of the hops to take away from the sourness of the beer. So these days with modern fruited sour beers, quite a few breweries don't add hops into the beer because they say the fruitiness is going to suppress the green component anyway. So that does happen, but many sour beer breweries still add hops into the beer because they say it just adds that complexity of flavour. So it's always interesting to ask a sour beer brewery what their hopping mentality is. Holy Goat, I believe, tend to add hops into their beers, and you can smell that in this one. So you do have little bits of, like, you've got a little bit of earthiness in there, a little bit of herbal character. You can pick up some floral notes, of course, and there are wee bits of grassiness in here. You can smell that in the nose. And, you will get placebos and things like that with some of the modern sour beers as well. But yeah, the fruity side, that covers the green component in this beer, I would say. But the fruity side of it's quite interesting. I mean, for me, yeah, you've got little bits of, like, there is a little touch of a raisiny sharpness to this one, maybe a little bit of plum, but you've also got a wee bit of a kind of figgy quality in there as well. So yeah, there's little bits of figgy character, little bits of raisin, little bits of plum, and you've got black currants and blackberries and stuff like that as well. So yeah, the way that it goes together in that sense is quite nice. The fruity character is kind of what you'd expect. Yeah, black currants, maybe a little bit of blackberry, figs, plums, raisins, prunes, stuff like that. So the way that this beer goes together in that sense, I think, is really, really nice. So gets a big thumbs up from me. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think this beer is really it smells really, really good, and I'm very curious to try it. I'm surprised, like, I don't get too much in the way of smokiness out of the aroma, and I didn't get too much of the red wine barrel, I have to say. So I'm curious to see how these flavours actually come out, because Holy Goat beers have a tendency to do that. They kind of hide some things within the aroma, and then it comes out more in the flavour. But let's taste this one then and see how we go. So this is Blood Eagle, the 2023 edition to be specific, a 7.4% Flanders Red Ale blended with an English stock ale containing 200 grams per litre of plums, with a portion of those being smoked. Let's try this. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. the impact of that was quite, oh man. Yeah, with sour beers like this, take one sip and just be prepared for that, but then let the flavour mellow out, and once your palate adjusts to it, you're going to get more and more of these flavours coming out. I'm going to say straight away though, once your palate adjusts to this beer is really, really damn good. If I think about it again within the Flanders Red category, it is quite different. And I will say, the red wine barrel and the smokiness that we're kind of missing from the aroma, they are quite obvious in the flavour, so that's there. But this is definitely one of the more kind of toasty and grainy offerings that I can think of that I've had from Holy Goat over the years. But again, you always expect good quality from this brewery, and they've delivered on this once again. Make no mistake about that. This beer is really pretty damn good, so gets a big, big thumbs up from me. Yeah, you've got your rye bread, you've got your fruitiness, you've got a little bit of hoppy character, you've got the woodiness, you've got the little bit of sourness and things in there. It's a really interesting beer, this one. Not conventional at all. If you're just thinking about the kind of old school sour beer styles and stuff, but really damn good, and you can't ask for much more. That's what Holy Goat want to do. They want to experiment a wee bit with these kind of old school sour beer styles. So yeah, let's break this beer down and describe it for you more in depth, as we always do. Middle third of your palate then. So yeah, for me, the backbone of this beer, you've got that lovely roasty toasty rye bready bread crust in there, so you can feel that. You can feel that forming the backbone of the beer, and that's great. So lovely roasty toasty, well fired rye bready bread crust in there. I wouldn't say it's like black and charred, but it is quite toasty. As you move further forward on that front third of your that middle third of your palate, sorry, you do get a little bit more of a kind of like vanilla, woody type character, but then above all of that, you can feel the slightly drier woody note from the wine barrel, of course. And I think into the aftertaste, the wine barrel starts to show you the more sharp red wine type qualities. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, the backbone of the beer is quite interesting, but the beer does have quite a bit of impact flavour. Quite a bit of the red wine barrel stuff comes out of this one, with and the Brettanomyces will be contributing to this as well. The impact flavour that comes in this one does have that little bit of kind of vinous punch to it, but then the beer obviously mellows out and gives you a lot of the kind of dry and sweet flavours that you want from it. For me, that's always been the measure of a good sour beer, is one that can mellow out and give you these lovely flavours. And this beer, well, pretty much all the Holy Goat ones we've had have done that over the years. But yeah, this beer is really nice. But yeah, on top of that kind of woody character, you start to get the actual rye bread. So you can feel a layer of a kind of like slightly airy and light, slightly sweet rye bread coming out of this one, and that's great. So yeah, you've got that kind of rye bready, that kind of oily rye bready layer in there, and then above that you get more of a wholemeal. You've got more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character coming out of it as well. So you've got that kind of more oily rye bready character in there, the kind of wholemeal bready character above that. Both of them have a slight degree of sweetness to them, but they're also a little bit drier into the aftertaste. As I say, there's a little touch of nuttiness within those as well. And the kind of rye bready character and the slightly sweeter side of this beer, that is probably down to the stock ale to an extent. But what you're getting with the woody side of the beer, the more you progress into it, is it shows you a little bit more vanilla, and I think that is more likely what is coming from the that's more likely what's coming from the Flanders Red side of this beer. So yeah, above the brown bready layer, you start to get the yeah, you start to get the brown sugary side of things. So there's a little bit of that toasty brown sugar in there. So yeah, there's a lot of that toasty brown sugary character in there, which is really nice. So yeah, it's quite a sweet toastiness actually, but then above that you start to get the more leathery brown sugar there. So you've got that kind of circle in the middle of your palate with the more leathery brown sugar and the toasty brown sugar underneath, and then maybe in the dead centre of your palate you've got a more oily sweet caramel and a wee bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit sitting above that. So yeah, the way that all of that kind of pieces together, I think, is really interesting in this beer. And there's a little bit of almost nuttiness and leatheriness within those brown sugars, which I do find really interesting. So yeah, the middle third of your palate in this beer is really quite interesting. And I'm guessing that the smoky plum in this one, it's the plummy note, that the smoky plum I think is contributing more to the leatheriness. It doesn't come across as overly smoky in a sense, but yeah, I think it's giving you a little bit of that kind of dry, leathery type character within the brown sugars. So that's really interesting for me as well. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need about the middle third of your palate, and that is where the majority of the complexity of this beer lies. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. As I've often said, the back third of your palate will give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But do remember, sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, the border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the rye bread kind of in the base, the wholemeal brown bread sitting on top of that, and a wee bit of the more kind of toasty stuff on top there. But yeah, the base of that back third of your palate, as I say, you've got the kind of the drier aspect of the woody character in there. You can feel a little bit of the vinous note sitting on top of that, incidentally. Then you've got cracker, rye bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. And above that, the kind of wholemeal brown bready layer again, which was a little bit lighter, taller, and more airy. And then creeping over the top of that, you've got some of the drier aspects of the brown sugar, which I think is really, really nice. So yeah, the way that pieces together, I think, is nice. The kind of drier, more toasty aspects of the brown sugar just creep over the top of that. But yeah, on top of everything else on that back third of the palate, you start to get the yeast. So the yeasty side of this beer for me is quite interesting, because at the centre you can feel it's like a slightly more dense brown bready character. Then as you move further out from that, it becomes a little bit more grainy and rye bready like. Then the very edge of it is more sort of bread crusty, I would say. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together, I think, is really, really nice. So yeah, I think the way the yeasty character comes out of this one, and it lingers into the aftertaste, it gives you this more kind of grainy, bready, almost like farmhousey brown bready type character. So yeah, that's really interesting for me with this one. But you can definitely feel a little bit of the plummy smokiness coming out of this beer into the aftertaste, which is interesting. So yeah, on the back third of your palate, you can definitely feel the flavour is taller. Then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, interesting stuff. So hoppy side of things then. Back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of herbal character, and then as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your tongue, it's got a wee bit more of a kind of floral aromaticity to it, which I think is really interesting. But yeah, round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is definitely lighter and more grassy, I would say, so a little bit more kind of zesty and things. So yeah, I like that about this one. But the other thing you can feel a little bit, you have to be aware of this, when you add fruit into beer as an adjunct, it's always going to suppress your green component a little bit. So that is worth bearing in mind. You can feel the kind of plums doing that a little bit with this beer. So you can feel the green around the floral and the grassy characters in particular. You can feel the plum just pushing against that a little bit. But let's have a wee look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of things. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. For me, you get a little bit of that kind of bready build up in there again. You've got the rye bread in the base, the wholemeal brown bread kind of sitting on top of that, then a bit more of a kind of toasty bready character on top. But then yeah, the base of the front third of your palate, you've got the rye bready bread crust, the woody character in there, the rye bread, the wholemeal brown bread, and then some of the kind of toasty brown sugars. Then you can feel the fruity adjunct in there, the sour impact, and then that oily bubble where the fruity juicy esters from the hops kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that then. Look at the impact flavour first. Yeah. So when you take this beer in, toward the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel the sharp, sour plums and things coming out. So they come out and just push in to the they push into the at the back of your palate there, and as you move further forward, it kind of it rolls kind of forward and things. So you get that, the sharper plummy impact in there. It comes in and it rolls forward and it mellows out really nicely. The plums actually come across as really juicy, and of course you've got the smoked plums sitting further back on the palate. Then maybe some of the smoked plums actually come out in that border region between front and middle third of your palate. We could say that. But yeah, other than that, you can feel a more soft, juicy plum within the oily bubble, the hoppy oily bubble. And as you move further forward, it's maybe a little touch figgy in the middle of that front third of your palate, and then it's a wee bit more sort of black curranty the further into the aftertaste that you go. This one, the further forward you go in that middle third of the palate. So yeah, plums, figs, and a little bit of black currant for me. Those are the main fruits in this one, but the sourness in this beer, of course, is plummy. There's maybe a little bit of oily pear coming out of this one too, or maybe and a little touch of like sultana type flavour, I think, underneath. You can feel that coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this one, I think, is really, really nice. So that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I do like how all of this kind of pieces together actually. So yeah, this is pretty interesting. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the flavour of this one, but I will say this is a really nice, really enjoyable Flanders Red, but definitely at the kind of drier, more woody and grainy end of the spectrum. The stock ale influence in this one does come through quite a little bit, and that's where these particular aspects are coming out of this beer. But yeah, this is a really interesting blend, this one, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again, but I'm guessing I'll probably be more interested in the stuff I haven't tried from Holy Goat. That's always the thing. They've always got some interesting beers on the go. But yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and just kind of ponder over the beer, because this really is good. Just to round off the review then, a wee look at the mouthfeel. For me, this beer, sour beers and wild ales for me are always a little bit lighter in their mouthfeel, but this one is pushing toward the kind of top end of mid-bodied. The carbonation does have a little bit of a prickle to it. Obviously, you're going to get a wee bit of that with these kind of bottle conditioned sours and stuff like that. But yeah, it's got a nice kind of cleanliness and a nice smoothness to it, this beer. Your IBU, I think, will be pretty low. You're probably talking about like 10 or 15 IBUs at most. But the malt base, as we say, it's got a bit of dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, toastiness on top, and then a dry sweetness. Then you've got the sour impact to this one, which when you first take the beer in, it does have a little bit of a kick to it, but it mellows out really nicely, and that is really what you want from one of these kind of modern sour beers, of course. But yeah, all in all, the fruitiness of this beer as well is lovely and juicy. This is a great beer, and I would recommend that you try this one and see what you think. But yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Blood Eagle 7.4% Flanders Red Ale English Stock Ale mix. Beautiful beer with some smoked plums in it. Really enjoyed this one. So yeah, from Holy Goat in Dundee, back in the motherland of Scotland. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Holy Goat Brewing as well. I've got 2 more bottles, maybe a third one from these guys to have a little look at over the next wee while. So keep your eyes peeled for those, and we will see about reviewing those in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, check out my social media, check out Holy Goat's social media, and I'll catch you guys in another review very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.